Let's see. We'll go 3, 2, and 1. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool.
All right, Sean, today we're going to get into some fun stuff. We're going to be talking behavioral science marketing with a guest coming up here in the next 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, so behavioral science. So we had to bring a guest in because it's a little over our pay grade.
Yes, exactly. We're juvenile behavioral science majors probably, but we need someone with a little more.
We need an adult in the room. So Nancy will be joining us to keep us on track, I guess. Maybe. We'll see. Who knows?
We'll see.
We haven't met Nancy yet.
We've got her. She'll be joining us shortly. We weren't sure that she would have a beverage, so we decided to go ahead and jump into our beverage review beforehand. And Sean, I guess we'll start with you. What do you have on today's show?
Well, today I have, you're going to love this one. So I'm going to go ahead and add it to the stream for those of you on the YouTubes. We have the Pastryarchy Unicorn Farts After Dark. Yes, for those of you listening, that is a real brand of a beer from our friends over at Duclaw Brewing Company. 8.5% ABV, 39 IBUs. It says, glitter shines brighter in the dark. Giddy up for this French toast flavor frenzy, complete with alluring chocolate and spiced cinnamon. A beautiful dark take on the original Unicorn's Fart collaboration between Duclaw Brewing and Diablo Donuts. Now brewed as a dessert stout with chocolatey cinnamon cereal and gold edible glitter.
Wow.
And if you want to hear what a unicorn fart sounds like.
I'm glad we did these before she came on. She probably
she'd be out the door already.
She would be appalled at our discussion.
At our juvenile beer talk. I'm never going to forget that.
I don't know. She might find them amusing. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see if there's actually glitter or not. So...
in the glass? You're looking for glitter in the glass?
Yeah.
I got to tell you, man, I don't know where did you find this?
These are all at HEB. I don't even have to go to Total Wine or anything. Our HEB has these.
I'm too lazy to go. I just go down the street here.
There's definitely glitter in this. It's hard to see.
Really?
But there's definitely some glitter. If I hold it up under the light, I can see the glitter, which really is exciting.
All right, 8.5? 8.5.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I've got a from Southern Tier. Let's see here. I've got a frosted sugar cookie. Let's see here.
Sounds good too.
Yeah. Frosted sugar cookie imperial ale. Perfect for the holidays. Gather around the fire with all your closest friends and cozy up with its delicious spectacle of pure sweetness that is sure to sprinkle your wintry days with joy.
Yes, I love it. We are in the spirit of the season now.
You won't believe it's beer and not a. You won't believe it's beer and not a tin of iced confections.
Wow.
So
that's a bold statement right there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, are you I'm not much of a sugar cookie guy, but are you?
Oh yeah, I love sugar cookie. Yeah.
Okay.
I love cookies.
Yeah, I do too, but I've just never been. I mean, I'll eat one if they're on the tray, but
yeah, for sure.
It's not like one that I seek out, but
yeah,
I'd be interested to see what this tastes like.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's figure it out. You got yours poured?
I am ready to go. Look at that.
All right.
Not much of a head on this one. Just really flat.
Just good ale. All right.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Ooh, wow. That is very sweet.
Well, I'm thankful it doesn't taste like a fart. So that's good. Good start.
Glad you got that out before she joined us. as she entered the green room.
Yeah, exactly. I'm keeping an eye on it. So
Let's see.
chocolate cinnamon crunch breakfast stout with gold glitter. I'm trying to see if I'm getting not getting a lot of chocolate, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting what I expected. It's good, but I'm not getting quite what I expected from the label.
Right.
So, but it's very drinkable as a stout, as an imperial stout goes.
Drinkable
So
doesn't sound promising.
no, it's good. It's just like I said, I was expecting a little more chocolate and cinnamon, and I'm not getting as much chocolate and cinnamon in this as I thought. So I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5 pints on our scale here.
Very good.
Yeah, 3.5. It's just
solid,
kind of middle road.
Average.
Great
score.
marketing though. I love the can. Love the can. So.
All right, comments from the on the Oso. What is that? Oso?
Yeah, that's just my
Oso McCool. Oh, okay.
I get it.
Oso McCool.
Yeah, I'm trying it out for marketing purposes.
I like that. All right, I'm going to give my score an Oso 4.6.
Oh wow, that's pretty strong.
It's good. Yeah, it's
pretty good for sugar cookie beer. I like that.
Yeah, it's not quite what I expected. So I'm going with an Oso 4.6.
All right, sounds good. Well, I see our guest is in the green room.
Yes.
Perfect.
Nancy is joining us. She is let me pull up her bio here because I have to give a wonderful introduction. And should I say should we pull her up while I'm doing the introduction to make sure I pronounce her?
Yeah, just make sure the crowd knows she's coming.
All right, we have Nancy. I'm going to say Harhut. It could be Harhut.
Oh, she gave you the sort of that's kind of right hand signal.
Harhut.
Okay.
She says we're going to be talking about her book, Using Behavioral Science in Marketing, how to drive customer action and loyalty by prompting instinctive responses. Getting people to take action is what Nancy is all about. Her specialty is a blend of best of breed creative with behavioral science to prompt response. She and her teams have won over 200 international and national awards for marketing effectiveness.
Wow.
Along the way, she's helped generate $68 million in incremental revenue for nationwide, establish 7 controls for GM Card, and create one of H&R Block's most successful campaigns. She's recognized for her work in B2C, B2B, nonprofit, and she's been named one of the 10 most fascinating people in B2B marketing.
Wow.
So, wow. This is gonna
How did you get her on this show? Man,
just
you're
amazing. I know
how
to.
Let's bring her on with a big round of applause. So, welcome to the show, Nancy.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Big round of applause.
Big round of applause. They're all standing, by the way, in case you couldn't see them. Yeah, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Nancy, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Looking forward to talking about your book. Yeah. So I forgot to mention in our emails back and forth, and I don't know if you've noticed, but you joining Sean and I have a little beverage that we rate prior to, and a lot of our listeners, some listeners love it, some of our listeners hate it. They call us juveniles, but that's okay. That's why we've got someone sophisticated like yourself to offset our juvenile behavior. So,
so you're the adult in the room today, Nancy.
That's right. Exactly.
So you know.
That's right.
So I know you guys do the beer thing. But I also know that some of your guests don't indulge. Someone recently was drinking a water, and I heard you very dejectedly say to each other, "Oh, he's got a water." But it's only 3:30 for me here, and I have a little bit of work after this, so I'm sipping my tea for now. But there's a beverage in my future. Don't worry.
All right. What's your go-to beverage? Yep. Once you're done with work.
This is going to be disappointing to you guys, but I'm a rum and diet girl.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Rum and what?
Rum and diet Coke, basically.
Oh, rum and diet Coke. Okay.
Yeah, rum and diet.
It's a good.
Holidays. I don't drink a lot of rum, but around the holidays, I like a little rum and eggnog. So that's a little.
So yeah,
go-to.
It is that time of year.
There is a beer though. There's one called Southern Tier Creme Brulee that's really quite good. One of my colleagues described it as dessert in a glass, and I have to say it was quite good. So
I think I've had that one. Yes.
I
We actually
occasionally.
reviewed that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just a few weeks ago. So I'm having a Southern Tier today, but it is a frosted sugar cookie.
Yeah. I think the creme brulee season passed, sadly.
Yeah.
I went to pick one up, and they're like, "Yeah, you're a little late." Like,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Who knew there was a creme brulee season?
I know. Well, that's what I said. And if there were a creme brulee season, you thought maybe it'd be around the holidays, you know.
Yeah.
But had you thought that way like I did, you would have been wrong.
Yeah, like we're all clear on when pumpkin spice season is, but
Yes.
these other ones we're not quite so sure about. So yeah. Well,
all right, Nancy, correct me. How I said, is it Harhut? I mean Harhut.
Harhut. Yes.
Harhut. Okay. Very good. Very
simple.
good. I nailed it the second time.
You did nail it the second time, and I've had Harhut, but it really is Harhut. So
yeah,
pretty simple.
Well, we're excited to talk about your book. Just to give our listeners a little background, and we'll be mentioning where to find it. Obviously, you find it on Amazon using the title again, Using Behavioral Science and Marketing. This book reveals how to trigger automatic action by applying behavioral science principles in marketing strategy and creative execution. So before we get into it, why don't you share with Sean and I a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into the book.
Sure. Yeah. So, I came up on the copywriting side, working in different agencies. And about 5.5 years ago, I co-founded HBT Marketing, which is a boutique agency. The HBT stands for Human Behavior Triggers. And what we do is we take marketing best practices and we blend those with behavioral science in order to increase the likelihood that people will engage with and respond to our clients' marketing messages. And when I talk about behavioral science, what I'm really talking about is the study of why people do what they do, how they make decisions. And what behavioral scientists have found is, despite the fact that we as marketers think that people make these well thought out, well considered decisions, if we just get the right message to the right person at the right time, we'll get the right response. It turns out that very often people are relying on decision making shortcuts. It's a way that they conserve mental energy. The human brain is actually evolved to conserve mental energy, and as a result, humans have developed these hardwired behaviors. We cruise along through life on autopilot. We encounter a certain situation, default to a hardwired behavior, giving it little to no thought. And a marketer might hear that and think, oh my gosh, I'm doomed. But really, it's good news for marketers, because if we know that people rely on decision making shortcuts, what we want to do is kind of serve up the right prompts or triggers in our marketing executions to get them to do what we want them to do. And so that's what we do at HBT Marketing. That's me in a nutshell.
That's very cool, and lots of different ways to go in that. So I'm glad you gave a little bit of a definition of behavioral science. What comes to mind for me is the idea or the saying, like, don't listen to what people say, watch what they do. And I think that's kind of the heart of behavioral science, if I'm not mistaken.
Sean, you're absolutely right. If you ask people, why did you do that? Why did you buy that product? Or why didn't you like that ad? They'll tell you what they think is the reason. But very often what they're unaware of is there are other factors, underlying factors that influence their decision. And these underlying factors can kind of push them in one direction or another. And, then people think, oh, well, I made the decision for this reason. But what they don't realize is there are other things at play. So, emotion is one of them. A lot of times we think that it's all about the rational reasons. If we provide the facts, the speeds, the feeds, the price, the, features and benefits.
That's what we justify it at. That's how we justify with the logic, right? But we really don't make the decision based on that.
You're absolutely right. We make the decision emotionally, and then we justify with the rational reason. So, so if you ask someone why they bought something, they would tell you, I don't know, I bought the car because of the great, mileage that, that it had, or the energy efficiency engine that it has. And it might be very different than that. It might be that those were factors, but what really tipped them over was they thought they looked darn good in that white car with their tan, with the convertible top down,
Exactly. That's the real reason. So I'm excited about this, because this is, if you can start to notice why people are doing things and what they're actually doing, like, even if you don't know why, but if you know what they do when you put out these certain triggers, which I can't wait to hear more about, you can just throw the triggers out there and just, not have to. I know you got to figure stuff out, but like, it seems like your method may be a little bit easier, and it's obviously effective based on some of the stats Jonathan was throwing out. So,
yeah.
Tell us where do you start with all this? Like, I'm a copywriter or I'm somebody with a business or whatever, like, how do I start incorporating more behavioral science into my, like, where do you start?
Sure, sure. So, so first I'll say it absolutely makes you more effective, but there's no magic bullet, there's no magic wand, none of us can make everybody do what we want them to do all of the time. It's not going to happen. But this will increase the likelihood that you'll get the response you're looking for if you're a marketer or if you're just a business person doing marketing. So, where do you start? That's a great question. So, what you want to do is you want to think about what it is you want your target market to do and what's the number one reason they're likely not going to do that. So you want them to do something. What's the thing that's standing in their way? You want to identify that buying barrier or that behavioral barrier, and then you want to look at the best argument to overcome it. So maybe you're a business that's moving into a new area, and so the biggest buying barrier is people don't know who you are. They're like, well, I don't know who they are. I'm not going to trust them. I don't feel comfortable buying from them. So if you've identified that happens to be the biggest buying barrier, then you can start to look at different behavioral science triggers. One thing you could look at is social proof. People have a tendency to do what people like them do. So you could talk about the number of other customers who've made the same decision you're asking that person to make, or you could run some customer testimonials. The other thing you could do is you could look at the authority principle. Say, okay, people don't know us, we're new to this area, but we've been endorsed by some of the biggest names in the industry, or we're members of the industry association, or we've appeared on network TV. So you kind of point to these authorities, and that makes people feel like, oh, okay, maybe they're a good person to do business with or a good company to do business with. So you really want to look at, why somebody doesn't want to do what you want them to do. And then you start to look at how you could overcome that barrier and create the behavior you're looking for. I have an interesting example that I think you guys might really appreciate. It was for a beer company. So would you like to hear a little bit about it?
Hey, you said beer company, so let's.
Yeah,
my
we're
ears
in.
are.
So I came across this. It was an award-winning campaign. I thought it was fabulous. So there was a company called DB Export out of New Zealand, and
Okay.
they wanted people to drink more beer. And the problem was it was a declining market. There's a lot of competition, and so you can go out there and say, hey, drink some more beer. You'll have more fun with your friends, or you deserve it, or any number of things you could say. But what they did is in brewing their beer, they took the leftover yeast and they created a biofuel with it. And so what they did is they reframed the act of drinking their beer as not just an indulgence, but as an act of saving the world, right? The more beer that you drank, the more of their beer that you drank, the more biofuel they could create, and the fewer carbons that would be released into the atmosphere. And so it was suddenly it wasn't just, oh, I'm having a beer because I want one. It was like, I'm doing my part to save the
Saving the
environment,
world.
save the world, and they
One
got
glass at a time.
one glass at a time. Exactly. Yeah. But they got a 10% lift in sales during a
Yeah.
declining market, by
Wow.
reframing how people thought about, consuming the product. So the words that we use to describe our product or our service or our value proposition can make a big difference in terms of how people react to it, how they understand it, and, the actions they take around it. So I thought that was a great example of framing. And framing is, in fact, one of those behavioral science principles that marketers have at their disposal.
Yeah.
That's really interesting that, you take a beer brand and couple it with like this environmental, you wouldn't necessarily expect those two to go together. So yeah, was that one of your campaigns, or is that just a campaign that you knew about?
It was, it was done by, not by me. It was done by a company, an agency called Colenso BBDO. And it was award winning. They ran it a few years ago, but I thought it was really fabulous. I saw it at an award show, did a little bit more research on it, and it made its way into the book as what I thought a good example of framing.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
No, yeah, Sean and I talked about this whole idea, I think last week on the show, or maybe a couple episodes, but just reframing, the challenge every copywriter, every marketer should be doing this, is taking what, your product, whatever product or you're trying to market or sell to the public, and stop using the same, start looking for other opportunities out there, or other ways that you can reframe it in a completely different way. Like you've just mentioned, not just, every beer company does the same thing, yet this company did something very unique and appealed to something completely different than what most of their competition was doing.
Yeah, and it gave you like this noble cause
Exactly. Yeah.
for your, your indulgence, your a thing you maybe isn't great for you, and now all of a sudden they transcended beer drinking, basically, right? Is what they've done. Just took it to a whole save the world level. It reminds me of like the Real Men of Genius ads from Budweiser and stuff. It's like,
that's right.
You too could save the world. One glass at a time.
One glass at a time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, it's funny, the the behavioral science principles that can be applied when you're trying to actually persuade someone. One thing is reframing something, getting them to view it a different way, ideally your way, right? Drink more beer and save the world. But behavioral scientists have found things that that are small that are also very effective. For example, people are more likely to do what you ask them to do if you give them a reason why. And a lot of times in marketing, we think we're putting the information in front of people. They've got all everything that they need. Do I really need to complete the circle by saying why they should do something? And it turns out that you do. There was a researcher out of Harvard. Her name was Ellen Langer, and she identified the word because as an automatic compliance trigger. So in other words, when we see or hear the word because, we're more likely to start to agree. And she ran this experiment. People were lined up to use a photocopier, and she instructed someone to go to the head of the line and say, "Excuse me, can I cut in front of you?" And 60% of the time, people were allowed to cut, 60. But then she repeated the experiment, and this time she instructed the person to go to the head of the line and say, "Excuse me, can I cut in front of you because I have some copies to make?" Well, the 60% number climbed to 93%. Big difference, right? Huge lift. Yeah. But when you think about it, everybody was standing in line because they had some copies to make, right? Exactly. You don't stand in line at the Xerox machine to get a Starbucks. It doesn't work that way. So she identified the word because as an automatic compliance trigger. When people see or hear it, they automatically start to agree before they've even processed what comes next. They're just in this agreeable, compliant mindset. So again, it's little things like this when we're trying to persuade people, little things like this, like tiny word choices or framing something one way or another, or phrasing something differently, or swapping out one word for another, that can actually make a big difference.
Yeah, it's like Scott Adams. He sometimes calls it even the worst reasons, like the fake because, like even if it's not a good reason, it's just people will a lot of times comply just because of that word. It's a very powerful word, because we have to have some rationale, or we have to have some justification why we're being compliant, or why we're doing what we're doing. There has to be a why behind it. And it could be very menial why, but as long as it's there.
So exactly, as long as it's there. Yeah, and it's because we're cruising along on autopilot. We're not really stopping and thinking and analyzing each decision. I mean, if we did, we'd be like, wait a minute, I'm standing in line because I have some copies to make. But we're conserving mental energy. So so these things make a difference. Yeah.
What are some other little shortcuts like that take? Is that called heuristics when you have a shortcut in your brain? Is that right? Sorry.
Yeah, heuristics or decision-making shortcuts, or decision defaults, and any of those terms actually work. One of them is this idea of autonomy bias. Humans are hardwired to crave some kind of control over themselves or their environments. And you might, if you're a psychologist, you might say people want agency, but we want some kind of control over ourselves and our environments. And researchers, tested, and they found that this is really deep rooted. It may in fact even be biological. They ran an experiment with people in a old age home, retirement home, assisted living facility, something like that. And the control group was given certain movies to watch and a plant that they could grow in their room. And the test group was allowed to choose the movies that they were going to watch and choose the plant that they could grow in the room. But yeah, everyone was going to watch movies. Everyone was going to have a plant in the room. The only difference was some people would choose the plant or choose the movies. And after 18 months, what they found was the people in the control group, the ones who didn't have a choice, twice as many of them had died. It's like, we have this desire for control. So, all right, so interesting, but where does this go with marketing? Well, choices make us feel like we have some kind of control. So instead of just putting one option in front of someone, you're much better off putting down, 2 or 3. Because if you put one thing in front of someone, the decision is, do I or do I not want this? And you think there's no context, there's nothing to compare it to. Maybe I'll sleep on it. Maybe I'll do some research. Maybe I'll talk to my business partner or my spouse or whatnot. And, life intervenes. You just don't get around to doing that research. But if you put 2 things down, the question isn't, do I or do I not want this? It's, which of these 2 do I want? It's almost like a foregone conclusion. You're going to get one of them. So providing choices is really, really important for marketers. Tulane University ran a study, and they found you can quadruple the likelihood that someone will make a buying decision in the moment if you provide a choice. And then related to that, there's this great little phrase. It's the BYAF technique, where BYAF stand for but you are free. And what researchers have found is, you can describe your product or service, you can, tell people about it, and then ask them to do what you want them to do, buy or try or buy again, whatever it is. But then you just say to them, but you are free to choose, but the choice is yours, but it's up to you. Jonathan,
Yeah.
I'd really like to do this, but it's up to you. Sean, really like to do this, but the choice is yours. And just having that phrase can double the likelihood that people will say yes.
Wow.
Just remind, and it's almost counterintuitive. Like I'm trying so hard to sell you. Why would I at the very end of it say, but you know what, it's up to you? But it turns out that can double the likelihood, just reminding people that they're the ones in control, because it taps into autonomy bias.
So that stack right there that you just mentioned, so having choice,
Yep.
you said increases by how much?
Tulane University found having a choice can nearly quadruple the buying decision in the moment.
Wow. And then you tack on the BYF, and that's another.
That can double the likelihood that people say yes.
That's so those two little things are super easy to add.
Yes.
To any campaign. That brings a question though, like, do you have any data or any information on how different those choices need to be? How similar are they? Like, you have any insight on that?
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm thinking back to the research that I read, and one of the studies was the one from Tulane. It was like electronics equipment, and it was I don't know. It was two of the same kind of thing, whether it was earphones or a recorder or something like that. But it was just two different options in the same category. So they would. I think in order to optimize the effect of it, they'd have to be kind of equal choices.
Right.
If it's, I don't know, I'm going to offer you a piece of fruit. Do you want an apple or an orange? As opposed to, do you want an apple or a steak? Like kind of different categories altogether. So but something, or maybe I'm going to submit a proposal to a client, and maybe I give them a couple of different options. We can do the A to Z version, which will take 6 months, or we can do the abbreviated ABC version, and that'll only take 3 months. At the end of the the day, we're going to give you something that you can use that's going to help answer your problem or your challenge, but here's two flavors of it. So I'd say that they need to be in the same ballpark to be effective.
Yeah.
There's something else very powerful in that there's an assumptive aspect of that, is that you're moving past the just making a decision.
Yeah.
You're moving beyond that to saying, okay, we're past the whether you will, it's which one, right? And so it's kind of like from their standpoint, they're making the decision, so that assumes you're moving forward, right? So it's almost like that assumptive close, that you've taken them beyond just making a decision to to which one.
Yeah. It's funny. I've shared this example at different conferences, and every once in a while, somebody will come up to me and say, I know that what you're talking about works, because in order to get my little kid to get dressed in the morning, what I found is I say you can wear this outfit or this outfit, and it works like a charm.
Right.
And so it's like you hear about these these behavioral science principles, and of course I speak about them in terms of marketing because that's my thing, but they really do govern how people behave, not just in a marketing sense, but just how we behave. And
absolutely,
when parents will come up and say, works like a charm with my kid, trying to get him dressed in the morning, I was like, that's awesome. That's such a great
reduce
example.
Some serious stress just by that one little principle alone, going straight to choices instead of fighting with your kids on just actually doing it,
Yeah,
absolutely. I remember, years ago when I was just starting out in the business, my creative director came in and he was like, I finally have the lead for this letter I'm writing. I've been wrestling with it. I finally got it. And the assignment was to try to get people to choose AT&T as a long distance company, try to get businesses to choose AT&T as a long distance company. And his lead was something like, if you don't make a decision soon, someone will make it for you, which was true, because this was a period of time where if you didn't make a decision, you were going to get either sent to AT&T or to Sprint or to MCI. This is, again, going back some time. But he landed on this, and the piece got almost a 40% response rate. And I talked to him about it later. At the time, I didn't really understand autonomy bias. I was just a young writer, but years later, he and I were still in touch. And I talked to him about it. And I said, how did you land there? And he said, you know what? The the audience was huge. We knew it was businesses. We didn't know if they were
Mhm.
small mom and pops or really large ones, that, the data wasn't segmented. But I thought the one thing that anyone who, owned a business would respond to was the idea that someone was going to take their decision-making ability away from them. And he was absolutely right. Neither he
Yeah.
nor I were thinking autonomy bias, but that's exactly where he landed. And it proved itself in the market. It was fabulous.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the core, kind of human drives, is that freedom and, the power of choice and that kind of stuff that, we all want, or we think we're striving for. It's why people want more money, right? Because they don't want the money. They want the choice that the money's going to buy, or they think it's going to buy. So yeah, that makes sense. That would be a very, very powerful one. And I'm reminded too, like there's a cognitive bias wheel. I think it's about 188 different cognitive biases that you could probably go down the list and use, most of these for. So,
Yep.
Jonathan, I think, do you have a list of questions there that?
Well, I do. I've got, I've actually gone through your book, Nancy, and one of the things I want to kind of zero on, you've got one chapter on that I want our listeners to hear, but it's on encouraging sales and loyalty through the consistency principle and what you call the how do you pronounce it? The Zigarnik?
Oh, the Zigarnik effect.
Zigarnik. What is the Zigarnik effect? I've never heard of this.
I saw that in the table of contents, and I was wondering the same thing.
So it's named after a Russian sociologist named Bluma Zigarnik. And basically what it means is we have a tendency to remember things that are unfinished or incomplete. So it's why cliffhangers work so well in the media, right? Where, we're watching Game of Thrones or something, and then it's like it's done for a while until the next next series of episodes come out, and we're like, we can't wait for that next season because we want to know what happens next. How is it going to end? So it's this human desire to not leave things incomplete and to have them kind of bug us, like just kind of nag away at us until we can, cross them off the list or check them off the list. And she actually kind of was spurred on to do research into this because she was watching servers in a restaurant or a cafe, and it seems that they would be great at remembering people's orders until they delivered the orders. And then once the server had delivered the orders, it just like went right out of their head. They didn't remember, who ordered what or who was who, but until they could get the order in front of people, they had this incredible, ability to remember it. So, it's these, incomplete tasks that we have a tendency to remember. So when you couple that with something like the commitment and consistency principle, which basically holds that once you make a decision, you like to remain consistent with it when future opportunities arise, and you generally do so with, without giving the matter a lot of thought, it becomes very powerful for marketers, because what it suggests to marketers is if you can get somebody to say yes once, you're much more likely to get them to say yes a second time, a third time, a fourth time without giving the matter a lot of thought. We make the decision once, and then all you have to do is remind people, hey, you signed up for this, or, you send them something and you, oh yeah, right, I already vetted that company, I do business with them. And we just kind of, default to it. We don't apply the same scrutiny to that marketing message that we would if it were coming from someone we'd never done business with before.
And why does that work so well? Because people don't want to seem flaky, right? I mean, ultimately, they don't want to seem inconsistent or.
Exactly. Once we make a decision or take a stand, we like to remain consistent with it. We don't like to look like we flip flop. So so not only does it save mental energy, and that we don't have to rethink each decision, but it helps us save face. It helps us remain consistent. So, getting those first small yeses. A lot of times in marketing, we go for the big yes. We want the sale, like do some business with me, buy my product, sign up for my service. That's the ultimate ask. But there's a lot of little ones that ladder up to it. Anything from, deciding to open my email, or visiting my website, or, watching a video, or tuning into a webinar, all of these things will ladder up to the ultimate yes. And so if you can get that first one, you can get a slightly larger ask and a slightly larger ask. And the next thing you know, you can, increase the likelihood you'll get the final yes.
Yeah. And it's hard to believe that works. When you first start looking at, or even if you've been doing it a while, you're like, is that really doing anything? Because there's no clear, like there's not a credit card entered at any of those yes ask, you know what I mean? Like, so sometimes it's hard to, you just have to trust that that's happening, that as you ask people to do stuff, they're getting more and more compliant as they go. I'm sure that's something I know is like, when I've written copy in the past, it's like you kind of want to cut some of that stuff out because you're like, I don't know if that's really working. Or if you're in a sales presentation, Jonathan, like, I really need to get them to start nodding their head yes, or like, maybe I can skip this part of the presentation. But it really does matter. That's what I'm hearing you say, Nancy.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, there have even been some research studies done with fundraisers where if they kind of, open the fundraising call with something innocuous like, Sean, I hope you're feeling well today, or Jonathan, how are you feeling today? And you've said, yes, I am feeling well, or I am feeling well. Thank you very much. You've kind of gone on record as saying, things are good for you. It's really hard now to turn around and then not make a donation to a cause for some person who's got it worse off than you do. Like, here you are, life is good, and now you're saying you can't make a small donation. Like, you see, it's almost like you want to be consistent. You've said yes, things are good, and now you want to say yes, I'll make a donation. So it is funny, like you said, Sean, we just have to trust that it works. But there are a lot of studies out there that indicate that it does, and it's consistency with your previous actions, and it's consistency with the the stand that you've taken. I think there was a couple of researchers in LA. They went out to a neighborhood in LA and they asked people how they felt about safe driving, and people said, yeah, of course, I'm in favor of safe driving. It's kind of hard not to be in favor of safe driving. So they asked people if they would put up a billboard on their front lawn that said that they supported safe driving. And so here, people are starting to back off. They're like, I want to put a billboard on my front lawn. What are the neighbors going to think? What's it going to do to my view? What's it going to do to my property value? Like, come on. So most people said no, but there was a small subsegment, 17% of the people, that said yes. And in that, or there was a small subsegment, 17% of the people, and in that small subsegment, 76% of that 17% said yes. And so we have to say to ourselves, why? But it turned out that a couple of weeks earlier, researchers had come by and asked these people, do you support safe driving? And they said yes. And they said, would you display a small 2-inch by 2-inch sign either on your door or your windshield saying that you support safe driving? And these people had said yes. So a couple of weeks later, when researchers came back, and they were different researchers, but researchers came back again with this idea of safe driving, the people who had said yes to the small 2-inch by 2-inch sign, they were the ones, 76% of those said yes to the billboard, and it was, consistent with their previous behavior. It was consistent with how they saw themselves. I see myself as someone who supports safe driving. It was consistent with the stand that they took. So it's pretty amazing, but the data don't lie. The proof is in the numbers.
Sure.
That's interesting that it was different researchers, different time periods. Like, that's good for marketers, I think, on a longer term view. Like, it doesn't have to be inside the same presentation is what I'm hearing you say.
Right.
Like, this could just be over time in your social media posts and your other things. You could be dropping little questions or hints or getting people to respond in a certain way so that when you do make your ask 2 weeks down the road, they're more likely to say yes.
Absolutely. One of the great examples I saw of this, I didn't write this, I just received it. So I don't have a lot of details, but it was from Amtrak. And they sent me an email and they said, our double days promotion is coming up, soon, but you need to enroll now if you want to take advantage of it. So, okay, that's fine. So you enroll, right? And at this point in time, you don't have to spend any money. You don't have to plan a trip. You're just saying, oh yeah, if I were to travel during the promo period, I want those double points. So people signed up, and then, a month or so later, they get an email that says, hey, double days are here. Since you signed up, now's the time to take a trip. And, you kind of feel like, yeah, like I signed up. I guess the next step is to take a trip. Like, I wouldn't have signed up if I didn't want to eventually, get these double points by taking a trip. So it's just that little extra nudge. And, again, I'm not privy to the results because I didn't do that work, but I thought that's a great example. It wasn't in the same email. There was a bit of time that passed, but they were building on that initial yes by now coming back with a larger ask, hoping to get that second yes.
Right. I saw some of that this year in the Black Friday campaigns. There's quite a few companies, at least that I'm on their list. They offered these pre-Black Friday early bird lists that you could sign up for. So they'd be like, hey, we're going to have this great Black Friday sale, but we're going to have an even better one for our really the subscribers that we really love, that get on the early bird list. So you signed up for this early bird list, and then sure enough, like Tuesday before Black Friday, he said, here's the best deal. This is even better than our Black Friday deal because you're on this list. It's only available to you. And I bought something. So
there you go. That's nice.
It works.
then that's got a little bit of exclusivity into it as
Mhm.
well, right? A little
Yeah.
bit of exclusivity baked into it, I should say, because it's like you're going to get something that not everyone else has access to by virtue of the fact that you're on this list. And we all love to have access to things other people don't have, whether it's
Insider
you know,
information.
insider information, right? Discounts or information or
Yeah,
access. We love to like lord it over our friends, like I
right.
have this and you
That's
don't,
right.
I was the first one to try the pizza of the month. Who cares?
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
care apparently,
Yes.
It's like we love to have that. So not only did you commit yourself by signing up, but you also got to enjoy some exclusivity that you were getting better deals than anyone else, which, that's a pretty powerful combo.
Yeah, and I think what's important too is on the marketer's end, you have to keep that promise.
Mhm.
Because I was watching, I was like, okay, did I really get a better deal than Black Friday? And sure enough, I did. It was probably $10, $20 difference, even above their Black Friday, or below their Black Friday, I guess. So
Yeah, Sean, that is a really good point. That idea that you need to kind of put your money where your mouth is, if you will. Like if you're going to make a promise, you have to live
yeah,
up to it. And with any of
Yeah.
these, if you're saying, if you're going to use the scarcity principle and say there are, this sale is only on for a week, you better not extend it.
Yeah.
Or if
we
there's
saw a
only
lot of that
you
this
know,
year
if
Yep.
there's
too.
only 10 of these left, there better not be 20 more in the stock room because that does kind of blow back on you. Now, I mean, extending a sale, I guess maybe that could be good news for somebody who missed it the first time, but it's like saying like you don't want to abuse this, you don't want to lie about it, you don't want to say, look, this is
Yeah.
the last one, and you're sitting on 100 of them. That it's just not right. And you might get the short-term sale, but in the long term it erodes brand trust, and
Yes.
it's
I think
just
Amazon does that a lot. Do you notice that Amazon, if you buy something, maybe it's through, I don't know, third
Well, they
party.
have some
They don't
algorithms.
update the when you buy something and there's 9 left or 3 left, and you order. I don't see the.
They also change prices based on how many times you've looked at the product.
Yes.
Like they will drop the
Yes.
product price or raise the price,
Yep.
depending on behavior. So,
Yeah.
What are some other cool like behavior things? What's some of your favorite kind of behavior things that you've learned over the years, Nancy?
So, there's one called availability bias, which I think is pretty interesting. And it's this idea that people will judge the likelihood of an event happening based on how easily they can recall a relevant example. And if like you're someone who never flies, for example, and someone says to you, "How safe is it to fly?" You're like, "Well, I don't know. I've never set foot on an airplane." But what would become available to you immediately when someone asks that question is any newspaper report, any television news story you heard about airplanes, and you would find yourself thinking, "Gee, the last several stories I heard about an airplane seem to involve, an engine piece dropping off mid-flight, or the plane having to quickly turn around and go back to the airport it took off from because there was a
Yeah.
mechanical problem, or maybe there were even, crashes and fatalities." And you would think, having never been on an airplane, but just having heard these stories, it's not all that safe to fly. And that's an example of availability bias. We will judge the likelihood of something happening, based on how easily we recall an example. So, from a marketing perspective, what that means is people are going to judge the likelihood of an event happening. The event would be their need for the product or service we're offering them, based on how readily they can think of themselves, needing it. So, before we ask them to buy, we should use some availability bias. We should first get them to think of a time in the past when, if they'd had our product or service, it'd come in really handy, or just even get them to imagine a time in the future when they could see themselves using it. So instead of just rushing right in with the news of the product or the service and the benefits of the product or the service, it can help to use availability bias to kind of, set the stage, or lay the groundwork, and get people thinking, oh yeah, I could see myself using that. Or had I had that before, I definitely would have used it. That means I could probably,
Yeah.
use it in the future. So availability bias is a nice little behavioral science tactic to use.
I
Sure.
like that. Yeah, I could see how, especially saying if you can get people to think about a time in the past when they would have used your product, that to me sounds really, really powerful. Because
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot going on there with the brain and how it works and what it's looking at, and because right, the idea is like if your brain's imagining something, it's almost as if it's already happened. Like it's
Mhm.
almost as if it's true.
Right.
So I could definitely see how that would be impactful. What else? What's some of your other?
So another, it's funny that you're talking about, the brain, and it's like if the brain is thinking about it, it's almost like it happened. So storytelling has that effect too. When we're listening to stories, we kind of get transported into that world, and we start to feel what the character is feeling. And so stories are really good that for that reason. It's like you put yourself in the shoes of the character, and you start to feel what they're feeling. And so you tell a story about someone who benefited from your product or service, and the next thing you know, the person who's reading the story or listening to the story is feeling that same emotion that the character did, that that pride of accomplishment, or that relief that they were saved from a problem. So storytelling can be really good. But just speaking about individual words, we talked about the word because, but another one of those power words is the word imagine. And the reason for this is when you ask someone to imagine something, a couple of things happen. So one thing that happens is right away they just kind of relax a little bit, right? Their defenses go down, because we're not talking about the here and now. We're not talking about reality. We're just going to imagine something, right? It's all imagination land. So it's like, so right away people kind of relax, their defenses go down. But then what happens is when you ask someone to imagine something, they start to create a mental picture, right? I'm going to ask you to, imagine what it would be like to use these new skis. And so you start to think about what it would be like to be using these new skis. And you put yourself on the mountain that you like to ski, in the weather you like to ski in, the conditions you like to ski in, wearing your favorite ski apparel. Like, you create a tailor-made mental image of yourself using these skis, going down the mountain, much better than I could if I was just trying to create one, because I'm asking you to imagine it.
Sure.
And then once you have that mental image, this is really key, you're seeing yourself do it. And before you can decide to physically take an action, you have to be able to see yourself doing it. If you had said to me, Sean, Nancy, would you ever jump out of an airplane? I would say to you, I just can't see myself doing that. Like that. I just can't see myself doing that. And that's very telling, because if you can't see yourself doing something, you're just not going to physically do it. So if you can see yourself doing it, if you can create that mental picture, if you can imagine it, it's not that much,
the mental picture is always better than the actual too, right? I mean, the way we imagine it.
Sure, because you've customized it exactly to you. It's going to be a perfectly sunny day, and you're going to be in a good mood, and you're going to be feeling great, and you're not going to be fatigued, and you're going to be making perfect turns down that mountain, right?
That's true. That's why I believe that every book that's ever been made into a movie, most of the time, the movies are never as good as the book. Right, because our minds are so much, our brains are so much better at imagining.
Yeah, we had a different voice for the character. We had
absolutely
the scenes were slightly different.
Everything was customized, like you said. Yeah.
Yes, Stephen King in his book on writing, he talks about that in about one of those things when you're writing a scene. He talks about I think it's the one where he had the pink or the purple rabbit. I can't remember which movie that was, but he's like, you just say there's a purple rabbit in a gilded cage, but he said, you don't go on describing the cage for 2 pages like some writers like to do. You let the reader fill that in, because what's important is the purple rabbit, not the cage.
That's right.
You let them fill in the cage, and then you move on.
Exactly.
And plus, they can do it so much faster in their mind than you can in writing out the text.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. The disappointment when your favorite book gets turned into a movie, and you're like, no. They don't sound right. They don't look right. Like, this is all wrong.
Not missing all the stuff that I put in.
Yeah,
absolutely.
My daughter complains about that all the time. It's like she's like, she watched the Hunger Games. That was one of her favorite things, growing up, and she's kind of gone back into them in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
She's like, they did so good following the books, and then the third book they just totally went a different way, and it ruined everything. It's like, so yeah, it's true. It's like, yeah. And I think when you offer imagination, you, like I was saying with the Stephen King example, you can't give too many details for exactly that reason. You want them to fill in the details. You just need enough to guide them.
That's right. Yeah.
Along, but not pull them out. I'm going through a hypnosis course right now, and that's one of the things he talks about when you're going through when you're putting somebody into a trance. He's like, you want them to, and you're trying to get them to recall a scene. You have to keep it vague enough that they fill in the details. Otherwise, it pulls them out of the trance, because they're like, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
So if I say your example, Nancy, like skiing down a heavily wooded slope and there's aspen trees everywhere. Well, if I ski in Utah, maybe there's not as many aspen trees as there is in Colorado where I ski, or if I ski on the East Coast, it's all pine trees,
and ice, but yeah,
exactly. So it would totally pull me out of the experience, because I'd be like, no, that's not where I usually ski.
Right.
And then you've lost the trance, and you've lost the.
Yep.
the whole imagination, because now they're arguing with you instead of following along with
Right,
you.
right. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, yeah. See, it's almost like, you're trying to move people along in the trance, and what
Mhm.
happens is they kind of hit this roadblock and they just they're stuck there. They can't quite get the right mental picture. That's
Yeah,
really fascinating. Wow.
and they move
Wow.
on to something else. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, could you give us a couple examples or one example of kind of your favorite campaign that you did, and kind of what the problem was when they came to you, how you came up with the solution, and then kind of the results?
Yeah, sure. There's a couple of them, and yeah, I want to say this is stuff that I worked on with my team. It wasn't all
Yeah.
me,
Mhm.
so I want to make
Sure.
sure that anyone who might be listening doesn't go, "She ran off with that and never even acknowledged us." But it was me and the team. But I'll give you two. One was for a business intelligence software product. So we're in the
Mhm.
B2B world. We're dealing with a sophisticated product. We're dealing with a sophisticated target market, an audience that would use it. It would be high level executives. And this particular business intelligence product was able to unlock data from disparate databases so that you could get a full 360 view. So you could take a number of different approaches. You could kind of explain what the product does. All right, look, you've got data that, maybe, is locked in 2, 3, 4 different databases, and this is going to unlock it all so you have it all together. Or you could take up, maybe a problem solution approach and say, your problem is this, data is all locked away in different databases, and so you're being asked to make decisions without all the information you need, and as a result, you're going to make a wrong one, and you're going to lose out, right? It's
Hmm.
only a matter of time.
Right.
And then the approach that we ended up taking was a much more emotional one. We led with what it must feel like to be a member of the target market who knows that they're being asked to make these very important decisions all the time without all the necessary information. And so we had a series of headlines, things like the antacid for a diet of tough decisions, or the delete button for that voice in your head, or the brown paper bag for financial hyperventilation. But basically just leading with like what it must feel like, a very emotional play, and then of course explaining the product and what it did, and why it would make sense to get it from them. But we went in with with 3 different campaigns for testing. Two of them were, one was more straightforward, one was more problem solution, and one was more emotionally driven. And what we found was the emotionally driven one was the one that really resonated. It got a 11% bump in brand favorability and a 13% bump in terms of purchase intent. And I believe the reason was for the target market, if they looked at that, I believe that they thought, if these people understand my world so well, they probably do have a product that I could use, because they absolutely know what I'm feeling. They know what it's like to be, asked to make these decisions where it's not just my job on the line, but it's the job of many of the employees in the company, or maybe it's the reputation of the company, or maybe, it's a decision that could get us into regulatory problems or financial problems, and there's a lot of weight that's resting on my shoulders, and these people really understand it, and they know that I go home at night and I can't sleep, and they know that I go home at night and my stomach is in knots. And so I thought that, I thought that was a really good example of using emotion in a B2B environment, and having the numbers to back it up.
Mhm.
Um, and then I think
Absolutely.
a second example would be one that used the reciprocity principle, which we haven't yet spoken about. But the reciprocity principle is this idea of give to get. And what behavioral scientists have found is, if somebody gives you something, whether or not you asked for it, but if somebody gives you something, you feel kind of indebted to them. You feel obliged to return the favor. So if someone does a favor for you, you feel like you should return it. If someone sends you a birthday card, you think, oh, I got to remember their birthday and send them a card on it. Or, if you go out for drinks with your buddies after work and someone picks up the tab, you think, all right, I'm going to get the next round. And if there isn't a next round, you think, all
Yeah.
right, the next time we go, I've got to make sure. Like we don't like to feel like we're in an owing position. We like to just clear the slate, or even the slate. So this idea of reciprocity can be very, very powerful. So a client came to us, so a financial services client, and they had been trying for the last year or so to reactivate some financial advisors who used to sell their product, but who had stopped. And they just couldn't get these financial advisors to return an email or return a phone call. And they'd stopped 12 months or more ago. So it wasn't like, it was just a month or so ago where you say, oh, well, maybe they had a downturn in business, or maybe they'd been on vacation. Now, it was 12 months or more. It was over a year. So you could pretty much assume they had made a decision and they'd moved on. And as a result, they weren't returning the calls, they weren't returning the emails. And the client said, we really want to try to activate them. So we decided to use the reciprocity principle. And the team came up with this really good idea. They sent out an email to the financial advisors that said, hey, watch your mailbox, watch your snail mail. there's a gift we've picked out especially for you, and it's going to be arriving really soon. So you get this email saying, oh, someone's sending me a gift, or not someone, I mean, they know who it was, oh, these guys are sending me a gift. So a couple of days later, in the mail, this white box appears, and inside the box is a framed New Yorker cartoon. And the New Yorker cartoon had something to do with some little kid going around his neighborhood selling retirement services. So it was, spot on in terms of the topic for, financial advisors. But not only was it a New Yorker cartoon that was relevant, it included the individual's name in the caption. So Jonathan, yours would have your name in the caption. Sean, yours would have your name in the caption. Mine would have my name. So it was framed. It had your name in the caption.
It's personalized. I love that.
Yeah, so you just know you're going to hang it on the office wall. I mean, how could you not, right? And then there was a note from the wholesaler that said, hey, we've been trying to get in touch with you. Would love to, just catch up, see how you're doing. What they found was not only did they reconnect and re-engage so many financial advisors who had stopped doing business with them, they actually generated $68 million in incremental revenue based on this particular promotion. So I thought it was a really, really good example of this idea of give to get, be the first one to give. Someone might say, I don't know, Nancy, that makes no sense. If they're going to spend money sending a gift, why not send it to the financial advisors that are doing business with them? Reinforce the good behavior, thank them for the good behavior. And there's certainly some wisdom to that. But the idea of, give to get, trying to, get these financial advisors to re-engage by sending a gift like that, really, really paid off incredibly well for them. And just a great example of give to get, and a great example of the reciprocity principle. These financial advisors had stopped doing business for quite some time. This is the thing that got them back. You're looking at that framed New Yorker cartoon on the wall, and if the wholesaler calls, how do you not take the call, right? Or you're looking at that, and it's it's top of mind.
Very effective.
I do some business with them. It was incredibly effective. So those are a couple of campaigns that bubbled to the top right away.
And Jonathan does that on his.
I use it all the time. I use it all the time when high level, because I'm in B2B. My business is B2B, so when I have executives that I can't get a response from, I will send out a cartoon. But it's not tailored. That's a great idea, having it more personalized
and framed. That's a whole other step, because you typically do the big core foam boards, right?
Yeah, I'll do a cartoon that I'll buy the rights to and put on a foam board and have it FedExed to them. And that's a good response rate too. But I think even higher, having it personalized is like going one step further. Yeah. I think the key in reciprocity is, don't go overboard, right? I mean, because you don't go buy them like a car. I mean, not that you buy them a car, but don't do something overly expensive, because then they feel like it's probably manipulative. But I think the key is in reciprocity is do something small, do something simple like that, and something that's tailored to them is even more meaningful to them. Yeah. So
absolutely. I think when it's tailored to them, whether it's personalized or whether it's just relevant because of the line of business they're in, or or the area where they live, or something, absolutely makes a difference. And the interesting thing is, you can say, hey, no obligation. Yeah. But still people feel it. It's one of the things that's hardwired in us. It probably helped us as a species survive generation after generation after generation. We're taught to be civil. We're taught to get along. We don't want to be outcast, because, the prospects for us are very good. So it's a great thing to take advantage of. Yeah.
But if you go too high, if it gets too expensive, then it feels like the mafia. Like, how the mafia used to send like really expensive things, and they're like, oh man, then you're indebted to it, so it's got that feeling. But doing something small feels like, oh yeah, this was thoughtful, but and even more so being tailored to them and personalized to them is incredible.
Yeah, if it's something they can keep around, I think that's just a bonus, because like you said, then they're looking at it,
right?
And every time they look at it, they can't help but think of who sent it.
Exactly.
Yeah, keeps it top of mind. But sometimes even just making information available, having the best, library of how-to videos, or the best blog that answers the questions that that people have about a particular product before they're ready to commit. You get that kind of information from someone, and you start to feel like, well, they're the company I'm going to give my business to, because I benefited from them. So it doesn't have to be an overblown cartoon or a personalized cartoon. Sometimes it's just giving people what they need when they need it, so that they form that bond.
I always remember Cialdini, in his book, his classic influence, he talked about just like getting them a soda, like a Coke or something, something simple like that. Just goes a long way. It's not the price of the product or the gift.
The drug reps know this as well as anybody, right? I mean, they keep half the businesses in the country. I mean, half the restaurants in the country in business with their taking lunches to doctors and nurses and things like that,
absolutely.
Because it works. Like you take a box of donuts to the construction crew, you take salads to the, wherever.
Donuts are so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't argue with a donut. Yeah. Well, I mean, the fundraisers know it too. The fundraising industry, because you get those, letter packages, and there's the address labels in them.
Yep.
I mean, I remember talking to someone from, I think it was the Susan Komen Foundation. This was at a conference a number of years ago, and I said, have you found anything to beat it? And she was like, no. And we've tested, we've tried all kinds of things. You can't get away from those darn address labels. And then I talked to a client of mine who is in financial services, has nothing to do with fundraising. And she said, you know what, we just tested this package where we sent out address labels and it did really well. And I was like, oh my gosh, now it's moved into financial services. But it's funny, we love to get things for free. If you've ever read Dan Ariely, his book Predictably Irrational, right? He's got an entire chapter in there about the pulling power of the word free and the emotional charge it creates in us. And so the idea of getting something for free, it's like, this is great, makes us feel good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So Nancy, we're getting up on our time. Did you have any other questions, Jonathan, or I want to make sure?
No, just where can our listeners find the book, and how can they learn more?
Because I noticed on Amazon, it looks like it's probably resale copies. Is there a place to get originals or?
So I didn't. I think you can get the originals on Amazon. It just came out at the end of August. So so you can get it at Amazon. You can get it at Kogan Page, which is the actual publisher. They have a website. So Kogan Page, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target. There are a number of different places. It's in Kindle and paperback, and I think there's a hardcover version that's basically for libraries, is what the publisher said to me. They're like, very few people buy the hardcover. It's a little pricey. Most people are doing the Kindle and the paperback. But absolutely love it if people would pick it up. If you pick it up at or through Kogan Page, through their website, it also comes with some downloadable cheat sheets is the wrong word, but downloadable recaps and assets and resources to use. So that's always good.
Good.
Cool.
I love that.
All right.
Fantastic. I would encourage, and the title of the book to all of our listeners, Using Behavioral Science in Marketing, Drive Customer Action. Sean, there you go. Drive Customer Action and Loyalty by Prompting Instinctive Responses. Fantastic book. I've got a copy. Nancy, thanks so much for spending some time. It's been a pleasure having you on, just talking about this. I love the whole idea. It made me think, we were talking about the power of emotion earlier, just talking about, I was reading an article about Chrysler. You guys remember the PT Cruiser, right? I don't think they make, obviously it's no longer around, but it was just an example of what we talked about earlier in the show about how people judge or make decisions on emotion, where, Chrysler was bought out by, German company, German car manufacturer, and they went in, and the German engineers thought the PT Cruiser was absolutely ridiculous and looked stupid from an engineering standpoint. And there's no way anyone will buy this thing. And they relegated it to one factory in Mexico. And guess what? Sales exploded when they introduced it, because people just loved the way it looked, I guess. So didn't matter what how it was engineered or anything. I guess people just thought it was like a cool gangster vehicle or something.
Yeah. You just, and they probably, or not probably, they perhaps even did focus groups. And again, what people say and what they do are two different things. People make decisions for reasons other than what a lot of business people think they're making decisions for. So
yeah. And I think that's something everybody on this call can remember, is like, you can ask people what they want, but they'll tell you what they think you want to hear, not necessarily what they.
Right.
And excuse me, a lot of times they don't know what they would actually do until they actually have done it. So
Right.
Absolutely true. But as a marketer or as a business person who's doing marketing, if you want to at least increase your chances of success, bake in some of these decision-making shortcut triggers into your communications, because it does have a tendency to prompt these automatic responses, these unthinking responses, and it helps you stack the deck in your favor, which is always a good thing.
No doubt. Nancy, thank you so much. That is Nancy Harhut. She, again, author of the fantastic book. Everybody should check it out. We'll have a link on the show page, Using Behavioral Science in Marketing. Nancy, we hope you have a great weekend. It's been a pleasure having you on, and look forward to getting this out to our listeners.
Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. Cheers.
Yep. You bet. Cheers. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right. Good stuff, man. You all right over there?
Yeah, got a tickle in my throat. Not great for podcast.
Yeah, you must be out of beer, because you would have taken a sip by now. But
yeah, I had to switch to electrolytes because the beer's gone. So.
No, good stuff. That was a great discussion, a great book. Reminds me a lot of the old classic. So I think everybody should. There's actually some additional stuff. So all of our listeners, if you haven't read this book, you need to grab a copy of Nancy's book, and then along with that, grab a copy of Cialdini's book, Influence, which is a classic. The 6 principles. But this actually reinforces that book, but it adds some additional things onto that
and examples
we've talked about,
and things like
exactly.
that. Yeah.
So
cool.
Very cool. Well, thanks for listening. Sean, you want to do a quick follow-up after? We'll talk after the show, or do you have to?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Yeah, to all of our listeners, you can find us persuasionbythepint.com. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms, Stitcher Radio, iHeart, Spotify, you name it. You can also find us on Facebook, on our Facebook group, Persuasion by the Pint. Just do a quick search. And to all of our listeners, thanks for listening. We'll see you next episode. Take care, and talk to you then.
See ya.
All right. All right, it's in broadcast. And let's see. Nancy's still on. Let's bring her out. There we go. Nancy, we are off the air. Thanks
Excellent.
for joining us.
Thank you very much. I wasn't sure if I should just leave right away, or if I needed to stay because something was still, recording or something. So I was like, I'm just going to hang here. They'll get rid of me when they need to. But you guys, thank you so much. I really appreciated this. What a great conversation. The only thing that made it better is if I'd had a beer with me, or a rum and diet, one of the two. But
make sure you do that after you get some. Where are you at that it's dark at 4:30 now?
I'm in Massachusetts. I'm actually down on Cape Cod.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. So you're way east. And
so I'm just for the weekend, actually. Usually I'm in Newton, which is just outside of Boston, but I'm down on the Cape for the weekend. And
I was watching it get dark. I was watching it get dark. I was like, she must be really east if it's that dark already. So
yeah.
What time does it get light? Sunrise?
I'm not even sure because I'm a late sleeper, but
my wife's the same way. So
yeah.
She's like, yeah, we don't need to worry about sunrises because I'm never going to see them. So yeah,
I understand that. Totally understand that. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Thanks for coming on. I can't wait to get a copy.
Sean, I'll send you Nancy's PR person sent me a link to her book, which I had access to, and I'll forward that over to you as well, where you can get the PDF or the digital version.
Cool.
So good stuff.
Yeah. And then I'd love to be able to publicize the the show.
Yeah, we'll send you a link. This will be published by Monday, and I'll be emailing you a link, Nancy, once we have it live.
Awesome. Well, Jonathan, I really appreciate it. Sean, you too.
Right.
Have yourself a great weekend, and thank you again. Do appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. I thought about doing like a quick episode on just for controversy. This whole liver. Have you followed this Liver King?
I was watching that video like before. I had to call it too.
That might get us some comments.
Yeah, I saw David posted something about it, and then I went and watched the video. And I'd been hearing a little bit. I'd never followed the guy because it just turned me off from day one. A little too much.
I agree.
But yeah, we could do a quick something on that. And
okay. I'm just going to stick with the another, frosted sugar. So
I think I'll
just
do the
say,
same. I'll just go grab another.
I'll have a different one. Yeah.
Another unicorn fart.
All right. Sounds good.
I mean, such a good name. So, all right. So be back.
I'll send you a link. All right.
Well, I'll just refresh because I see it once it's in there.
So okay. Cool. Awesome.
Once you've got it up, just text me that it's ready and I'll log on.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.